A very good afternoon to everyone. I'm Ms. Neha Yushing, and I'm delighted to welcome you all on behalf of the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Integral University, Lucknow. Now, today's guest lecture on West Asia, Cartography, Imperialism, and Economics promises a powerful blend of history, economics, and politics. And we are honored to have with us and to host Dr. Waiel Sheikh Hassan Awwad, a veteran foreign journalist and a global affairs expert who has reported some of the most conflict ridden zones of the world. He has reported from those areas. And today's session is all the more special because we have with us participants who have joined not only from India, but also from Syria, Iran, Israel, and the United Kingdom, making this session a truly global one. So, without further ado, I would now invite Dr. Khwaja Danish Hamid to formally introduce our distinguished speaker.
Uh, Thank you, Ms. Neha, ma'am, for giving me this opportunities to introduce Dr. Waiel Sheikh Hassan Awwad, sir, who happens to be a South Asia-based senior journalist since 1979, traveled extensively in most of South and Southeast Asian countries, interviewed many Asian leaders, graduated from Delhi University, MBBS PDA, studies post-graduation in journalism, and underwent a number of programs in international law and human rights, diplomatic correspondent, and video journalism from Delhi, London, and Dubai. Investigative correspondent covered wars extensively in Sri Lanka, Kashmir, Afghanistan, West Asia, and Gulf region. He survived many attempts to his life during the coverage of wars in Jaffna, Kargil, Afghanistan. Lastly, as an embedded journalist with USA troops when he was ambushed in Iraq in the year 2003, where he was captured for 10 days and escaped his execution with his team. Worked as South Asia Bureau Chief of Al Arabiya TV channel, Dubai-based city, MBC London, MBC FM radio. He has special program Dateline South Asia in Arabic first of its kind with Asia News International, ANI. He is a radio correspondent and analyst for Kuwait, Oman, Damascus Radio. Many of his writing published in English and Arabic in major newspapers and magazines. He interviewed many world leaders from Asia and the Arab world. President of Foreign Correspondent Club, South Asia FCC for the third time, served as governor for a decade of the British Board Schools, active and functioning members of International Association Press Club, IAPC, currently based in Warsaw, Poland, distinguished fellow West Asia, Vice President MENA Tirotoma Foundation, distinguished advisor, Global Counterterrorism Council, GCTC, fellow of International Strategic Institute, Rome, Italy, Secretary General of Indo-Arab Intellectual Forum, winner of many international awards, and fluent in Arabic, English, Hindi, and Persian. So before I invite Dr. Awwad for delivering this lecture, I will like to throw a brief background on what this talk will be all about. The talk is titled as West Asia, Cartography, Imperialism, and Economics. So the background is that the region of West Asia has been a matter of discussion since the oil boom. Oil not only transformed the region politically but economically as well. The region hence holds its own prominence internationally. The major world power have always been in some way or the others tried to make their presence felt in the oil-rich region by extending and interfering in day-to-day affairs of the Sheikhdoms, pitching them against each other to sell arms and ammunition in exchange of crude oil. This sale of arms not only make the region extremely volatile, but also benefits in generating employment in West Asia, in West that is dominated by global North, a group of developed countries. Thus, the endeavor not only prevents the elected political representative of the West from homegrown pressure generated due to unemployment, as the weapon manufacturing companies provide people of these countries, that is the global North countries, with employment. Secondly, the entire economy of the West is energy hungry and fossil fuel based economy. Hence, they are always in need to power their industrialization so that employments could be generated and industries keep on running and flooding international market with their products. Hence, It has become a matter of survival for every country of the West to make necessary intervention and to keep the region volatile so that the states keep on failing due to civil wars catalyzed by the West, and necessary intervention could be made for extracting crude oil for powering up the fossil fuel based economies. The colonial and imperial powers, thus, after dissolution of Ottoman Empire, distributed these territories amongst themselves like anything. Then cartography was done keeping in mind the interest of the West and the Europeans. The study of cartography becomes very important over here as many of the nations of West Asia were divided by dissolving the states that were previously existing, like that of Kurdistan in West Asia, Baluchistan and Pashtunistan in South Asia. When these nationalities reassert themselves, it makes the states newly emerged prone to civil war, as these nations were divided by the colonial powers as per their vested interests and merged into different countries just to make them unstable, as the newly formed states were on the fault lines and frontiers of the old indigenous states who have their glorious histories of their own. Thus, from the above lecture, we are expected to know what is colonial cartography and its effects on the region? Number one. Number two, what is why did colonial cartographers divided West Asia in such a way? What is imperialism and its impact on the region? What is terrorism? What is economics with special relation to terrorism, oil, and factor affecting the crude oil prices in the global markets? How did Sheikhdoms trying to diversify their economies? How civil wars in West Asia is making the Sheikhdoms in the region as surveillance, unstable, and parking states. So, without wasting any further time, I will request Dr. Awwad to enlighten us on the topic, that is West Asia, cartography, imperialism, and economics. Over to you, Dr. Awwad. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me with the Interglobal University. I thank you, Neha, for
You are
the
not
introduction.
audible.
It's from your side. I am okay. You have to unmute me. I am fine from my side. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, sir.
Yeah, because it's from your side, not from my side. Uh, yes. Assalamu alaikum. Sat Sri Akal, Namaskar, Bonsoir, good afternoon to everybody on the panels, on the discussions. Thank you, Neha. And I must thank the Interglobal University for inviting me for this very important topics. And in particular, I would like to thank Dr. Khawaja Danish Hamid for inviting me. And I think this is my third appearance in the Interglobal Universities in different years, over the years when I am in India. I think the topic is a contemporary, and it is very much timing, especially with the current volatile situation in the Middle East, where we can see the destructions of the Palestine and the annihilation of the whole of Palestine. And that brings us to the little bit perspective of the history. First of all, we should understand the term Middle East or West Asia, where that is with the colonial have given that name of the Middle East 1902, when the United States, I think that's called Alfred Hyatt Tyers, he named it in that terms, and he included Iran, and he included Afghanistan, Pakistan, Turkey. So therefore, the region which we are talking about could be the Middle East or West Asia, as India says. It is from the Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Palestine, Israel, Lebanon, and that is the whole of northern part of Saudi Arabia. That's what we call, as we know, Bilad al-Sham, which is considered to be the heart of the Arab world. We know that the Arab world extended from Mauritania, the North African states, up to Qatar. So the whole region has been stretched over the years and united under the colonial power of Turkey, or the empire of the Ottoman Empire, where the Arab countries were all together, tribal, feudal societies and all, but they were subjugated to all kind of, suppressions and atrocities. They were not even allowed to emerge under the Ottoman Empire as a strong nation, because Ottoman Empire had its own policy on that region. There were lots of resentment against the Turkish and the colonial forces, name it, France, 109 years ago, France, the UK, and the Caesar Russia those days, three of them have decided that they should support and rebellions against the Ottoman Empire to gain independence, and they promised the Arab countries independence, and they have brought King Faisal and the Sharif Faisal and the rest of the Arab tribe leaders that you will side with us, we will support you, we'll fund you, and then we will give you independence. But after the liberation from the Ottoman Empire, in fact, it was never been the dream that the Arab country can gain their independence, and they were immediately turned into, divided them into ethnic and economic lines, where the Sykes-Picot was not only the French generals and the advocate from both of them, UK and France, and even the involvement of Russia those days. We came to know that Russian involvement after the Bolshevist revolution took place, and then we saw the revolution, and they revealed the plan for dividing the Arab world. So the Arab world was divided, and to retain their dominance or superiority on the Arab world, it was decided, because of the rich oil discovery in the region and the industrializations of the European nations. So therefore, it was a prime important to link political into economic, into the historic, to the regions, and they have divided among themselves whatever their line of interest, nothing of the line of the interest of the people. So you can see some of the maps in the Arab world, they just look like a scale. They took they just draw the borders and divided. So all nations have been divided, except in certain area where I can see, like Syria and Lebanon, where it was done into a zigzag type, because they wanted to create a Christians dominance region in Lebanon. So the villagers were the more of the Christians were taken into Lebanon, and the more of the Islamic went into Syria, and that's how the division took place in the Arab world. And to keep the Arab world busy, there was a colonial project, and that colonial project was to create a state of Israel in the heart of Palestine. So let's be very clear about the project in the region, because now we are completing the phase one of the hostility and the division of the Arab world, where it has been divided on ethnic tribal reality, creating unstable nation states. And now, after this, the new turmoils, we can see that the American project have been shaping up in this part of the world, and further dividing the Arab world into breaking it into the small state in ethnic and religious lines, where it will remain divided, and interfighting among the Arab nation will create what we call the hegemony of the West in this part of the world, the dominance of Israel in the region. That's the prime important for them, is not only the oil and gas for themselves, but also to secure pipelines out of these countries into Europe from different parts of the world, where there will be no sovereignty of these nations on their interest of the pipeline. So therefore, let us see it from the wider perspective and see where the interest of the colonial power lies. It lies in their own interest to divide and rule and foster, they brought most of the Arab leaders into, they were coming under the tanks of the colonial power after the Second World War. Governments were formed, but most of these governments were only stooges to the West, and whatever the West have decided on them, they will implement, and therefore they never had carried out the building a democratic system in the language like India. We see after independence that India went into a democratic system and the parliament. Though in the Arab world we say that we had been into that system, but however it never been implemented in true spirit, and that the people could govern themselves and the democracy could spread. So therefore there was an alienation between the people of the mass who wanted to be independent, who wanted to have sovereignty, who wanted to have a good life, and the second part was the power, the elite powers ruling the countries, where they are only looking for their own personal interest, and that is where it was very difficult to have rulers who have the aspiration of his own people. So therefore, intervention was very easy in the Arab affairs, and that's what when we saw the breakup of the Arab world only after the clean and break policy 1995 by the United States, followed by the attack on the 11th September in the US when they have started implementing their plan to be the dominant power in the region and maintain its supremacy as a superior power of the US after the fall of the Soviet Union are the only unipolar world. And then we saw that many countries fall into apart. It is from Afghanistan, and it's followed by Iraq, unilateral and exceptional war without any permission from the UN Security Council. They went and they occupied, invaded on a pretext of a weapon of mass destruction, which had never been existent. Even the Americans themselves admitted that their going to Iraq was never been the reason for the weapon of mass destruction, but the oil and gas and removing Saddam Hussein from the power. So for me, as an Assyrian national who lived in that Bilad al-Sham, we call it, or the West Asian region, I can say that the breakup of Iraq as the backbone of the Arab security was one of the major achievements for the Israeli dominance and the American and the West dominance, because we know that Ben Gurion, when they formed the Israeli state inside Palestine 1948, and 45% were giving to the minority Palestinian who never accepted the division, and 55 to the majority, the minority Jew, but the majority were giving only 45%. So there was that time they said the only way of Israel's survival in the region and the dominance is to break up three major armies in the region. One was Iraq, second was Syria, and third is Egypt. So I think these are the strategic plan they have put to control and exploit the Middle East. And therefore, there you can see most of the political manipulation, the economic dependency, the military intervention have taken place on those regards. And especially, we have noticed after the 2011, all of you have followed the Arab Spring, where all the Arab people moved from Tunisia, especially sparked in Tunisia. And we thought that this is the time where the mass of it's a youth, it is the people movement that they wanted to have a peaceful kind of, demonstration, and then a new democracy, transitional forces. Then suddenly that forces which were already on the street and the aspiration of the people have been hijacked by Muslim Brotherhood organization, where they have taken over, and we saw the more mess rather than creating more stable region. And that's what just look like the domino effect, one after the other is falling apart. And then we have seen the consequences of that Arab Spring fall down in Syria, where Syria also, the frontal stage of Israel with Israel have been disintegrated, and it's now going to be divided on their ethnic and their religious line of the Syrian society. So that was the early plan of the region, and they continue politically, economically, and the interfighting after the Saddam Hussein invasion of Kuwait, the liberation of Kuwait, and then we had the invasion of Iraq, then the invasion of Syria. And then we came to know about the terrorism culture, the jihadist culture of terrorism that created in Afghanistan. In 1979, we all know, after the Iranian Revolution and the Shah of Iran came to power, removed from power, Ayatollah Khomeini came to power, there was a Shia dominance in that part, and there was to counter that Shia movement, there was the invasion of the Russian USSR to Afghanistan, where the Islamist forces started, the Sunni majority, the Taliban and Al-Qaeda got activity with the CIA, with the ISI, and the Saudis have supported the formation of Al-Qaeda organization there. And we have seen the Sunni Shia angle to that story. And then the terrorism culture was used to the extent that it became a tools to achieve political objectives. They have succeeded in Afghanistan. They have succeeded in bringing down the government of Najibullah, and then they continued that the USSR fragmented, and then the American thought that by using terrorism as a tool, they can achieve many objectives. So most of this jihadist group or the Arab Mujahideen, we call them, who were acting and who joined the war, the jihadist war, holy war, which the American call it. It's not the Arab or the Islamic. It has nothing to do with the religion, by the way. They misnomer, they used religion for wrong reason, and they just interpreted that jihad is only manifested in the fighting against the occupants. If it was the true issue, then Gaza, I think, is the best example, or Palestine, the best example. If the Muslim Ummah, as they say, wanted to fight and liberate a state which is totally annihilated by Israel. So therefore, let us continue talk realistic of their own interest of bringing this region under their influence. So immediately after the Iraq invasion, we have seen the birth of Al-Qaeda, the birth of ISIS, and 19 out of 25 of the top leader who formed Daesh, ISIS, were actually in the American prisons in Iraq, in Kripa camp, in Abu Ghraib, and even including Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, when they had 10 million bounty on his head, but the American released him by mistake, as they say. So he was able to go and form ISIS in Syria and in Iraq, and then we had al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, join hand, loyalty. We had Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which was part of the Abu Muhammad al-Julani, the current interim president of Syria. All of you know he gave loyalty to Al-Qaeda, to Daesh first. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi sent him to Syria. Then Al-Qaeda, they formed Jabhat al-Nusra. Then after that, he pulled out from al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda, and he made Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, where he had different group of Syrian group, wanted to liberate Syria from the hand of the President Assad regime. And they succeeded with the help of the country neighboring like Turkey, like the Arab country, Arab money, which has funded all these kind of activities. And also Russia, Iran, everybody got involved in the Syrian conflict. And we could see the mess they have created, where we have lost the control on Syria. And that brings me to the reason why the war in Syria was one of the major achievements for not only to the dominance and the expansion of Israel into those territories, but also to give you a background, what is the reason why everybody wants Syria, why everything was Syria. Syria is the meeting point, was between the West and the East, and it was the end of the Silk Route, which was Palmyra, Aleppo, and then you go to the sea side where the Mediterranean, Africa, Europe. That was the meeting point. Then you had also the Qataris and the Qataris pipeline, the American Qatari pipeline, wanted to create a pipeline from Qatar into Saudi Arabia through Jordan into Syria and to Europe. So the dominance of the Russian oil in the European market would have been brought down. Similarly, there was another plan that the Russian refused or did not accept this plan of the Qataris. So Qatar joined hand with the other rebels group funded by the American, as the former Prime Minister of Qatar, Hamad bin Jassim, said it openly in BBC, and you can have it in YouTube, that we created Daesh, we created Al-Qaeda in Syria, and we spent on behest of the American $137 billion to create an opposition in Syria. So therefore, the opposition, genuine opposition of Syria for a change, was never given the chances of taking over in Syria. It is only those created rebels by the Western world, by the United States, by the Israelis, by the Arab monies, who were able to create a state within a state, and then they took over Syria and control of Syria, including the current government with more than 70,000 mercenaries from 137 countries, 73 countries, 83 countries, 37,000 jihadists joined Syria and Iraq. So all this terrorism created in that part of the world is not only because of Syria, because it's the way you only can fight. You can create fitna, seditions, you can break the countries, you can make it more into a feudal kind of fighting, which is going on right now. And later on, at the ultimate goal is to make sure that the Sunni Shia fight, and that is how you can divide and rule the Arab world. So I think our leaders, unfortunately, were unable to read history properly. So there is a repeated rearrangement of the region based on the ethnic and religious line where we are witnessing it now currently. I think there are certain points where we led to the instability or this, what you are watching now on Gaza and Syria and Lebanon and Iran is nothing an overnight has happened. As I am saying, it is a culmination of 109 years of the colonial attitude toward this region. But let me make it very clear. We as Arabs are responsible for the mess we created because we gave the upper hand to vested interest nation to play with interfere with our internal affairs. The imperial interest was the more dominant. The economic manipulation and dominance of the West on the Arab country continued for this long 109 years. And now we are facing the consequences of that wrong policy being implemented in our part of the world. If you look at the current situation now, Gaza war or 7th of October, everybody says 7th of October was the turning point. It could be the turning point for Israel doctrine in the region. It's not for the Palestinian. Palestinians have been suffering at the hand of the Israelis ever since the division of Palestine, 1948, and then continued till date. So therefore, Gaza Strip was in fact one of the reasons where the Israeli invaded more than 3 times. They have attacked them continuously, non-stop. So therefore, Gaza Strip, as you know the history of the ground, 70% of the Gazan people are actually from different parts of Palestine, refugees or survivors of the genocide on them by the Israeli settlers who have taken their land and took their homes and they expelled them. So these are expelled Palestinians from their original land in the actual historical Palestine. That is one of the issues. If people tell you it is Gaza, it is Hamas. Hamas is not Palestine. Palestine is not Hamas. Hamas is a group resisting the Israelis' occupation, and it could be the hand, even the Israeli themselves helped in creating Hamas. And we all know why there is a case against Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, because there are lots of money siphoned from Qatar into Hamas. He made lots of cash corruptions, Netanyahu, and there are cases against him in his own court. But if we look at the current scenario in Palestine, we realize the West Bank, there is no Hamas. West Bank, why they are annihilating the land? Why they are expelling Palestinians? More than 120,000 Palestinians have been expelled out of their this camp inside West Bank. More than 800 people have been killed, including 60 children. More than 12,000 people have now under detention. So what's going on in the Palestinian? Now there is a law which is passed even by the Israelis. They said this is this law will never give a Palestinian two-state solution. So to live under the deceptions or deceiving the public that it is Israel as the victim of the Arabs and the Palestinian, because none of the Arab want peace. If we look at the current map of Israel, nothing left of Palestine except maybe 5 or 7% of Palestine under the Palestinian, and the rest is already taken by the Israelis. Even the 7% left, because of the Palestinian population, which is around 6 million people, they cannot kick them out, but they are planning to make sure that there will be not only the genocide to continue on the Gazan people, where using all kind of atrocities against the Palestinian, but also there will be more of the forced expulsion, where they are trying to turn it into ghettos and worse than the Holocaust that the Israelis have suffered at the hand of the European. So I think without settling the issue of Palestine, this is what we always say. This the crux of the problem in the Arab world is the creation of Israel and the dominant forces of the West on the colonized attitude toward the region, and also not giving the Palestinians their right of coexisting side by side with the Israelis as per the UN Security Council resolution, many resolution which has been vetoed by the United States, even by the Israelis. So after 2-3 points I should mention before I open the floor for the question and answer is that The discovery of the oil, of course, was one of the major hand that what brought the European into the colonial power. The second part is because of the refusal of creating the Palestinian state after the liberation forces, coalition forces, more than 40 countries joined hands with the American to liberate Kuwait from Saddam Hussein invasion. There was a promise by the American to us and to the Arabs and to the rest of the world that there will be also a peaceful conference to settle the Palestinian issue. So therefore, most of the Arab countries joined hand with the American in liberating Kuwait, but then they went for us with the Madrid conference, 1991-92, and then they said all the conflict, the parties, stakeholders, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, Israel, and the Arab League were all joined hand in finding Palestinian finding a solution to the crisis and two-state solution. But then we saw that there was a piecemeal breaking up of this. One went with the Oslo agreement, the other one went with the Arafat agreement, that Jordan, and one Yasser Arafat. And late President Yasser Arafat thought that because the Oslo agreement and the end page was written that after 5 years, a viable state of Palestine will exist. So he thought that is true. But then they turned him into a terrorist and they say he's not peace, man of peace. And then similarly with Mahmoud Abbas, and they continue with Hamas till date. So therefore, unsettling of the Palestinian issue will remain the crux problem in bringing stability in the region. Now, what could be the impact currently on the situation? Now, there is a geopolitical shift here. There is a new Middle East project which has been talked about ever since the American the clean and break policy. Condoleezza Rice talked about it in the war on Lebanon, that there is a new Middle East. Benjamin Netanyahu have written in his book, 1995, his vision of the Middle East. For Israel, its existence in this part of the world from Euphrates to the Nile. Now you can hear it from the Smotrich, Ben Gvir, even Netanyahu. They are showing you maps. This is Israel security. And they started with you with something called Abraham Accord, normalize relation, integrate Israel into the region, then breaking up country after the other. So they're taking over Syria now. They're taking over Lebanon now. They're going to attack Iran because that is the only solid backer of the resistance arch which was created from Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine to defend the hegemony of the West and the Israeli expansion. And they are telling you very frankly, it is from Euphrates to the Nile. So which means the Sinai Peninsula, which means Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and 1/3 of Saudi Arabia. That is what the actual map of the Israelis even put at the Knesset. So if there is a project to disintegrate this part of the world, and there's an American project to continue the dominance of Israel in this part of the world and do the West, that it is the only country which they can partner with, is called Israel. None of the Arab partners are legitimate partner with them because of their colonial attitude toward the region. And therefore, they will keep on suffering on these hands, and they will be redrawing of the Maritimes because now there are gas and oil discovered in the Mediterranean Sea. There is also the gas of Iran, which is more important, the gas of Qatar. So therefore, they don't see the Arab countries as independent or for the wealth of it should go to the people. They just see that this wealth should go only to their pocket and minimal go to the people of this part. So therefore, sectarian divide continue till date. They are feeding it in different kind of a violence. They will bring for you terrorism. They will take like what did Bremer when the governor of Iraq after the invasion, and I was there with the American troops. He had $10 billion till date unaccounted for. Nobody knows where did he spend this $10 billion. But what did he do? He wrote the constitution of Iraq on a sectarian line. Then only we came to know how many sects are in Islam only after the American invasion. And I think we have 250 plus sects, and they fed every sect differently. They brought 5,000 Shia to him, 5,000 Sunni men to him, and he started giving money to the Sunni and to the Shia. Go and bomb one mosque in the Shia the dominant area, or blow a mosque in the Sunni dominant area of a Shia. So therefore, that sectarian violence started and spread it into Syria, and there where the division have taken place. People will start asking you here, why there is a resistance if you wanted the Abraham Accord to have a relation with Israel? Why is Syria, Lebanon, Palestinians are fighting the Israel? Because they are under occupation. There are territories occupied by Israel after 1967 war. Golan is under the occupation. Gaza was occupied. West Bank was taken by Israel. So Israel was expanding. And even now we have a President Trump who himself, look at the map. So Israel is too tiny country in the world. Look at Israel map, he's saying. It should expand naturally at the cost of the neighbor. So if that is the attitude of the US toward the region, then I don't see any reason why we should call it a conspiracy theory, but it is the conspiracy by itself to divide and rule this part of the world and get Israel the upper hand and being the dominant forces there. I'm repeatedly coming back to this point because this is very important, because what will happen after the 2000, after the Second World War, our society have never been able to transfer into a civil society from a feudal kind of society. So we had a huge division, and that's where now they're bringing back us into the medieval age to bring us back to the interfighting among the Arabs and the tribe leaders without even looking of the interest of the as a whole United Arab. So this will lead to a collapse, not only of the institution that they have created, but the collapse of every governance state. And we are witnessing currently now is redrawing of the Arab maps on different lines. So the redrawing of the Arab land, we will see countries will be obliterated from the map. There will be country annexed by the other into the map. Syria was, for the Israelis, was the fight between the Israel and Iran. Now with Turkey playing the major card, it is between Israel and Turkey, which they wanted who can grab much bigger of the cake of the Syrian cake. So this is how the situation leading to more instability. Now people say that there could be also violence and could be emergence of terrorism. Terrorism never emerged from this part of the world. We were not responsible for the Second World War. We are not responsible for it. We know that we are not responsible for Nagasaki and Hiroshima and other things. But immediately after the dividing of the Arab world and playing with the religious card, emergence of violence and linking it to Islam was part of the colonial power to continue till date. And we have seen this is how it is happening. So therefore, let us be as a researchers, as an academicians, see it from different angle, from the wider perspective, not only of the interest of the colonial power, but also the conflict of interest between the superpower. Now, I'll culminate my speech speaking about the wider perspective. Why there is people talking of a regional war in West Asia. Now, if you look at the passage of the oil from Strait of Hormuz, from the Red Sea into the Mediterranean through the Suez Canal, you have more than 40% of the world trade go from these areas, right? And you have the oil and gas. So who will be suffering the maximum? It is Asian nation, India, China, Korea, Japan. These are the major nations depending on the oil from this part of the world. Now, if a war break, what does it mean? That they will have the total control, the American and the West, on those passages. So under the pretext of fighting terrorism or fighting, a regional war, they are creating a complete perpetual provocation for permanent war in the region. And that is what we are facing currently. If this war in Iran was already taken, was stopped, not because the war is not going to happen again. The war is going to happen again. They will continue to make sure that Iran is destabilized, disintegrated. Then they will take into Turkey, they will take into Egypt, and that's the same domino effect will continue to break all these nations and destroy. If you look at the trends in the region, you will understand that what the survival for some political leader in Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu, his political survival depending on the continuity of the war in the region. Therefore, Don't think that the region is going to have more stability, but it will be more of a war, more of a moderate power emerging, regional power, and reshaping of it into the strategic military alliances, because the big powers, the American knows that the Chinese are having the BRI, the initiative by Xi Jinping, the China leader, since 2013. They are trying to build up this road belt initiative, but they are blocking it. And look at the road where all that map is coming. Any country fall on that road has been subjugated to all kind of destruction and coup and destabilizing it, because the West is, and especially the US, is countering any measure by the Chinese. Russia, when they divided Russia, they started with the Ukraine war, and that Russia is isolated from Europe, and the American have the dominance and economically over Europe now, with more than 400 American companies are taking over the 600 billion market of US dollars of Europe. And Russia is now pushed itself more closely toward China because of the sanction. Similar, Iran was happened to it because of the Western pressure. So the conflict is not in isolation, should not be seen in isolation of the big power game in this part of the world. I will leave it here. I will leave it for question and answer. There are so many points to be covered, and I'm ready for all your question and answer this session. Back to you, Professor.
Muted है ना? Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Well, that was a very comprehensive and an amazing insight into the entire topic of West Asia, cartography, imperialism, and some of the points that I really appreciated is when you talked about the interfighting in the West Asian regions after the Saddam Hussein invasion of Kuwait, Syria, and Iraq, and you mentioned about the jihadist culture of Afghanistan. And moreover, the way you explained that why Syria is so much important right now, being the major point between the eastern and the western regions, and also being at the end of the Silk Route region. And most importantly, you focused on the fact that religion has nothing to do with these wars. So that was one important point that we all learned. And to a certain extent, you also mentioned that Arabs are responsible for giving the upper hand to the West, and it is now that they are suffering the repercussions or the consequences of that. So now, after having that wonderful and insightful session by Dr. Awwad, I would now invite Dr. Khwaja Danish Hamid to kindly moderate the question answer session.
Thank you, Ms. Neha Yushing, for allowing me to moderate this session. Uh, Meanwhile, when the questions are coming, we don't have many questions right now. So, meanwhile, I will use this opportunity to ask some queries and questions which I have from my side to Dr. Waiel, sir. Sir, how do you think that nationalism is casting its impact on the concept of Ummah in the region?
Please off your laptop, because there's echo.
Sir, you're not audible, sir.
Yeah, mute something on your system and speak. There is echo coming. Now I can hear you. Yeah.
So,
Yes, Professor.
So you're not audible, sir. The mic
Yes,
is
you are
not
audible, but there is echo.
It's echoing. Saying that.
Is it echoing, sir?
Yes.
Sir, my question is, how is the concept of nationalism casting its impact on?
No, it's your audio is echo. There is something on your system on. Off it and then start only one through the mic.
Okay. You're on mute. Yeah. Now it's fine, sir?
Yeah, it's better. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So my question is that how is concept of nationalism is casting its shadows on the concept of ummah in the region, sir? Can you, sir, throw
Yeah.
some light on this?
Yes, nationalism was the feeling. Pan-Arab nationalism, in fact, was very much strong, especially under the Ottoman Empire, because we felt that the Arab, who have contributed richly to the history of the world and humanity, have been suppressed during the Ottoman Empire period. And then we realized that most of the Arab scientists and the Arab educated academicians were denied any kind. I mean, you don't see many of them have been risen during the Ottoman period. So there was a strong feeling among the Arab nations for a nationalism. And in fact, when we have the post Second World War, there was a pan-Arabism movement also led by Jamal Abdel Nasser, who was the leader of the Egypt, who have also been a very strong and a vocal leader orator that the people said if he delivered a speech on, he would create a revolution in Mauritania or in Qatar because of his strong vocal appeal. And people were so much so after the Second World War, they're aspiring for an independent nation. I think the failure of the repeated governments in the Arab world, which is supported by the West, the alienation of the governing governments on the Arab world with the people, not to meet their aspiration, have created some sense of reviving the religion. And if you look at the political Islam which was created into the Arab world, is nothing but to link the religion into the governing bodies. When we all know that Europe have fought for 200 years to separate the religion, the church from the governing, and they succeeded. But when it came to the Middle East, they immediately start implementing this because they know it is the only way of seditions that you can divide and rule this part of the world because of the difference of opinion and that sectarian line. When the invasion of Iraq took place, we could realize there are lots of channels in the Arab world and then they were supported by the West. It spoke of religion, the venom, and only, give you that venom, and that made people hate each other. So now they are coming with the concept that we will create an Emirates, Islamic Emirates, whether it's failed in Afghanistan. They took it to Iraq. Now they're taking it into Syria, Islamic Emirates, where they're bringing most of the Muslims. Speaking of an ummah, it's nothing to do with the ummah. Ummah is a misnomer, have been misused by all of us. Ummah means we have also Christians, we have Jews. They lived in our part of the world for centuries, and we lived together. We never had a problem. So when you talk of one color, is definitely you are sidelining the other minorities in the region, and there where they have been fed by the West into that part of the world, and they took advantage of us. So I think the concept of linking Islam, political Islam, into power is only to bring it back into what is called as Ummah. We have one cause, that Islam is the only solution for you. These are the Muslim Brotherhood's organization, which was funded by the British, brought it into power, which is also the Wahhabism also movement, where the current MBS, Saudi Arabia himself, Mohammed bin Salman, said it to the American channel that it was the American who encouraged the Saudis to promote Wahhabism all over the world. And what does it mean? That means you are not doing the true feeling of an Islamic person or an ummah to serve the ummah purpose. You are serving their own interest by promoting Wahhabism as a way of Islam while fighting communism, because America was anti-communist party and never wanted any communist country to come post Second World War. So we saw the bilateral, bipolar world, and then they are bringing us back. Why I said the Muslim Brotherhood organization hijacked the aspiration of the people in the street. It's just because they are supported from outside and they have the fund, and they have been the shadow government in corrupted governments in the Arab world. So that is not the alternative. I think Ummah concept should be implemented in the true spirit, as we were able throughout history to contribute to the global humanity, not into a single identity or entity of any country.
So there is one question from a historian who has worked extensively on Lucknow. His name is Roshan Taki, sir. His question is, what was the policy of West? Why was the policy of West in 1995 called the Vision of the East?
What was the vision?
What was the policy of West called 1995 as the Vision of the East?
Yes, the vision of the East was, you see, we always say now the Asian century we are living in, right? It is not the European or the American. It is the Asian. It is South-South, which we are seeing the economic growth in such a way that it is the dominant in many of the countries, not like unlike in Europe, ailing Europe or the United States, what goes into negative growth. So the economic growth has been showing in this part of the world, and that is why this part of the world become a target, because once these countries start emerging as a regional power and a unified body, that's why you see people are interfering, and the Western world is looking into militarization of the Asia Pacific, not because they know that they have to take on China, they have to take on the ASEAN nations, they have to take into different countries, because they are unable to compete economically with China and with the East, because the East have emerged and they have also the strength and they're able to compete with their own companies. So that is what the conflict of interest lies, where they thought that it is acting East policy. It doesn't mean acting East to join hands and gain from that, but to break the East into different interfighting conflicts, and only the military industry benefit out of this war. Look at the happening now. Even the Americans themselves say it in their policy that it is China next, which is our rivalry, or what's our enemy competitor, which is trying to deviate the American or take the American position as the superpower economically and militarily. But nobody is going to replace the United States as a military power, because it is still the strong. But America created the war on Russia and Europe with it against Ukraine, because they wanted to make sure that they are the only forces remain. Nobody can reshape the international new world order. So I think these are issues we have to see it from the eyes of the North Bloc and the South Bloc and the cooperation, because the South is now voicing up, coming up. That is where they are trying to address some of the issues of the Eastern world, but to some extent not giving them that liberty that they're able to dominate the Western doctrine and the Western ideas of the new world order.
So one more question from my side, which I would like to put up. Sir, how oil production gets influenced by the conflicts in West Asia, and why per barrel the cost of production increases from the oil field to the petrol pumps?
That's a very interesting question. See, the discovery of the oil in part of the world have already opened the lust of the Western world, and we call it the crude oil. And that the cruel word is not a crude oil, it's the cruel word that they have created. When they discover oil in Iraq, you remember in Iraq, the discovery of the oil, in fact, I was in Iraq and it was the oil flooding in the street. You need only 30 cents to extract 1 barrel of oil at the coast. So who can leave that lust of oil in the Iraq, the second or even the first largest reservoir of oil in the world? So therefore, when they discovered the oil, it was the fight between the American, the French, the British, whom they have the supposed government of Iraq wanted to nationalize the British petroleum. Then they made a coup, they changed it. Then the French came. The Americans supported Saddam Hussein against Abdel Karim Qasim. So they removed the total of the France. The American came. So similarly in Iran, when Iran oil was discovered, it was the government of Iran, which was democratically elected. Mossadegh was elected as the prime minister of Iran, 1953. It was the British, because he wanted to nationalize his oil. The British government, the MI5, joined hands with the CIA in toppling him and bringing the Shah of Iran. And when the Shah of Iran became so powerful, the 12th strongest party in the world, that's the army in the world, he wanted to have being a regional power, dominance, and nationalize The American companies taking 73% of their revenue to their pocket, and only 3% go to the public, rest to the corrupted officers. They will remove him, and they brought another regime. And a similar fashion, the Gulf country, the GCC, when the oil was discovered, it is considered the custodian or the custodies of UK and US. So UK gave up to the American pressures and they ended their colonization, but the economic colonization continued till date. Let us face the fact: the British is the sinister plot by Britain, which have lost its influence in the part of the world. Now they are reviving their part of history by coming back into the same water of the East British company, which they have ruled this part of the world, because they felt that they have lost for the US all their influence, all their dominance, and now they're sabotaging Syria, they're sabotaging in Iran, in Iraq, and they will do the same thing in the Gulf countries. So oil discovery and the dominant giant companies of oil have led to this mess on the ground. I give you the latest example. Why Israel, everybody say Israel is occupying 65 kilometers deep inside Syria, which is more than 600 square kilometers, right? Why? I wrote about it 2014. An American company discovered oil in the Golan, occupied Syrian Golan, in Israel. And the tributary of this oil is 65 kilometers south deep inside Syria. So you, under the pretext of terrorism, where we all know that Netanyahu government was supporting Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, Abu Muhammad al-Julani, and they were paying them stipend to their fighters to topple Assad regime. And once they came to power, they said these are terrorists. So you can understand that what the public perceptions being given or deceiving the public is different from their sinister plot. It is a similar in Syria. They discovered the gas in the Mediterranean. 2/3 of the largest reservoir of gas is in the Syrian shore. So they wanted to have a maritime division under Julani with Turkey. So Turkey will take the major chops of the cakes. So Syria will remain under their influence. Tomorrow, this is where the reason why the oil discovery have not given much to the public. 3% only of the Iraqi oil was given to the people. 97% was taken by the British. Is a similar, it's a colonial. When Libyan Gaddafi was removed, for what he was removed? Because of the gas, because of the oil, because of the money, and they said the gas should not stop flowing into Europe, and they succeeded. So let us see. If you wanted to bring this Ummah or this world together, South-South cooperation, address the issues which you are facing. If you don't address it, you will fall trapped into the hand of the sinister of the vested interest nation, and you will be divided again. So the colonial power will come back because they are unable to digest any civilized nation civilization. They are not civilized. These are not civilization. They are destroying civilization after civilization, from Iraq to Syria, tomorrow to Iran, and then they will go back to India. They will go back to China. And so therefore, the spreading of radicalism in the region and extremism, mark my word, it's going to be spread from Mauritania and North African western part into China province of Uyghur, because we have in Syria currently 12,000 fighters fighting along with this from Uyghur Oli region. Why? What they are doing in Syria? It is Turkey who brought them there. So Turkish Empire mindset, the de facto Khalifa Erdogan, think that he can create an ummah under the banner of Islamic ummah. And the people, the West continue to loot our oil and resources because we still foolishly following a leader who has his own interests, who was siphoning the oil of Syria and selling it to Daesh and selling it to the Israelis, and still in power and fighting against the Palestinian and Ummah cause.
Sir, one more question from my side. Sir, how do you see the new West Asia project and its meta cities complementing the agenda of the West?
Well, I
The
think they
meta
have been
cities like
talking about.
Neom and other things.
Yes, I mean they are definitely, there is a project, as I said, in the region. They are trying to implement it, and that therefore I don't see much a future of the Arab world as united. That definitely there is no unity. It's more pessimistic picture, more grim picture. There will be some more wars. I mean, I think after Iran, it will be Turkey, it will be Egypt, and there will be definitely disintegration. There will be expulsion of the Palestinian into Jordan, into Syria, and different part of the world by the Israelis. And Israel will never allow a settlement or any strong Islamic nation by our Julani or Ahmad al-Shara to rule inside Syria next door. So therefore, as long as Syria remain weak, demilitarized, and small-scale arms, and Israel can have more dominance in breaking it into different cantons and ghettos, so they can take over Syria and take over the rest of the world and breaking. So I think their breaking up is going to be more, and that will gain at the upper hand of the Western world, and we will be the biggest loser in any future stability in this part of the world. Unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for giving such detailed answers to the queries posted by our participants. And with that astounding and fascinating and comprehensive lecture, I would just say that it has been an absolute eye opener for all of us who have attended today's session, and also for future people who will be attending your sessions. And this lecture is now on YouTube, so whenever one would want, they can readily get an access to your video. And your session reminds me of one famous dialogue by Ronald Reagan, and it says that, it says that peace is not peace is not about the absence of conflict. It means handling the conflicts by peaceful means. So
Absolutely.
your lecture has been very motivational and very inspiring and very comprehensive. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
with that, I would
Thank you for
now
having me.
Thank you, sir. And with that, I would now invite Dr. Khwaja Danish Hamid once again to kindly give the concluding remarks along with the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Neha Yushin, for allowing me to conclude and deliver vote of thanks. Basically, what we have learned from this lecture is that what terrorism is all about, how oil prices are being affected by the conflicts in the region, what makes these oil prices coming from the crude oil fields to the petrol pumps go so high, and what is the reason and why is West so interested in the region in order to provoke fault lines and frontiers in the regions, so that conflicts can become prolonged and continue for a very long period of time, because it benefits their agenda of generating employment in the West, because West is dominated by those companies and those MNCs that are heavily reliant on building these weapons and other devices that are used in conflicts. So these are the things which are takeaways from your lecture. And we also get to know about the cartography part of the lecture. That is very important. What is West Asia? How it is different from the Middle East? How is different it from the Gulf region? What is Arab world? How it is different from the Gulf region? And what is Arab culture? So everything we got to know from this lecture, which is very insightful and very beneficial for our students and for the faculty members as well. So with this, I would like to thank Dr. Waiel Awwad sir for sparing up his from sometimes from his busy schedule and enlightening us on the topic West Asia, cartography, imperialism, and economics. A very I will extend my thanks from my faculty members, as well as from those who are involved directly or indirectly in organizing this lecture. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for having me, and best of luck for you and the students, researchers, and everybody in the camp. Looking forward to see you in person. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
End stream.
You ended the stream, no?
Just a minute.